15 minutes to resume quorum. If not, we adjourn. I should note at the outset that ordinarily the January meeting is the occasion by which we elect a chair and vice chair. But the county has, by way of our new agreement, the county gets an extra member on the committee. And I understand the election of that committee member will happen this month. So provided that takes place in January and we have notification at City Hall in Brantford, we'll have the election of chair and vice chair in February. And we put it off just so that the new member can actually enjoy in the election, okay, if that's the proper word. We don't have any presentations today. We have no delegations. Could I get a mover and seconder for all the things we're going to be dealing with today? Councillor Wall, Mayor Bailey, thank you very much. We have 5-1, we have 6-1 and 6-2. Of those three items, does anybody wish to separate? Councillor Miller.
Yeah, 5-1 and 6-2, I believe.
5-1 and 6-2. Thank you. Anything else, guys? Then I'm going to go ahead and ask you to vote on the remaining item, which would be 6.1. Show of hands, all those in favor, please. And I believe that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Councillor Miller, I will go to you now. You have the floor on 5.1.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. 3 to staff. I'm just going to drill in on one of the components of this report, and that's just the rent. When the Minister Clark sent the letter and the grants, he was in there. He's talking about dollars can be used for rent assistance, and my question is that money that he's referring to for rent assistance, is that just for people that are already under the auspices of social services? For example, anybody that's in a rent to gear RGI unit or an affordable unit, or is that money meant for the community at large? And I'll follow up with another question.
Good morning. I'm Deb Schlichter, Acting Director for Housing and Homelessness. Through the chair, the funds can be used as how the service manager chooses to set that up. Often is through a rent bank process, and the rent bank has some guidelines around if it's a targeted group or if it's a broader group. So each service manager can do something a little bit different with how wide they want to have that net or how narrow they want to have that net.
Okay, follow up then. So so if I read the report right, you've created and operate $811,000 was dedicated to create and operate an ongoing rent bank program. So if I'm hearing you correctly, maybe I'm not, please correct me, that is meant for anybody in the community?
Through the chair, we currently have a rent bank program in place. It is specific to people who are have to meet the eligibility criteria for that. It's not a broad for everybody in the community. It's more of a targeted rent bank right now. We were considering broadening the rules for that, but right now that fund is, we support that fund through this SURF money.
Okay, so if we look at some of these, some individuals have maybe suffered a little more than the average person, and a good example would be a restaurant owner. Who's busted their hump and they invested their life savings to get that restaurant going, and through no fault of their own, they find themselves in a bit of a financial quagmire, and they're having trouble meeting their rent. Would they be able to apply to that program?
Sorry, this would be for residential rent. This is your home renting.
I'm not sorry, Mr.
Right.
No, I'm not talking about the rent for their business. I'm talking about the rent where they live, their residential.
So the rent bank is set up for people who are falling behind in their residential rent ability to pay. And it would help anybody who is in that situation if they meet the criteria. Now, maybe
Okay.
Anthony is also here and he can give more specifics about what the rent bank criteria is, but anybody who meets that criteria, regardless of the situation, if they meet that criteria, they are eligible for those funds.
Okay, and then last question, and okay, that you've answered the question. They got to meet the right criteria. Last question: how well subscribed is that portion of the program?
I'm going to have to ask Anthony if he could add some detail to that. Thanks, Anthony.
No problem. Thanks, Deb. And through the chair. So with the with those housing stability fund is what we like to call them. Through the first 3 phases of SURF, we've been able to support roughly 120 households with that additional funding through SURF. So as Deb had mentioned, it is kind of that there needs to be the criteria met, and that typically is underneath that low income cutoff. So to your point, Councillor Miller, if an individual was falling behind as a small business owner, they may not meet the criteria based on assets that they have. I'd have to go back and check the actual criteria through the HRC, through the Housing Resource Center, but we have been able to support roughly 120 clients with that additional $800,000. Now, on that note, that rent stability bank that you're referring to through the phase 3 investment plan, we did have to pivot some of those dollars to include those in our COVID response, and that would be to continue our operations at the isolation facility. So not all of those dollars were actually used for that rent bank. With the influx in the waves that we've seen, it was included in the investment plan, but unfortunately, not all of the dollars went there. And I think I've included some of that in the report itself. That really, through the EOC, we'll have to go back and pivot. But at this time, the extended housing stability funding has supported quite a few families in the community.
Councillor Miller, that's time. Thank you. Councillor Sless, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I guess through you to Deb. Deb, we've asked for an extension on the 177 Coburn West build. If that's not granted, do we have legal obligations where we've made commitments to the developer to build that we would not be able to fulfill and possibly be in legal trouble?
Through the chair, I'm going to answer that in a couple different ways. First of all, the ministry has approved both the SURF 2 holdback funding plan and both the SURF 4 phase 4 plan, which both of them included capital money for that particular capital build at 177 Coburn. So both those plans have been approved by the ministry. So that says to us that they are already committing themselves to us spending that money on that program. We're waiting for an answer back. We have continually been asking for what that answer is. We need to know soon. And we are hopeful that that will be granted to us.
Okay, but the question was, Deb, if it's not granted to us, are we in legal jeopardy with contracts that we've entered into?
That might be a response from legal. We've looked at risks involved in doing this project. This project we still want to go ahead and do. We have the funding committed from them. The extension of the program is the piece that we're waiting for, not the funding.
Right, but the funding was contingent on it being expended during a certain period, and we couldn't meet that. So we haven't fulfilled our end of the commitment, and that was my concern, Deb.
No, it's a very good question. I don't know if there's any legal folks on the call, but Marlene, I see, is there.
Deb, let me suggest that you ask legal to provide us a memo on yellow paper in response to Councillor Celeste's question.
Thank
If you
you.
wouldn't mind, okay. Sorry,
Will do.
Marlene, jump in if you want.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I was going to suggest same, given that it's subject to some confidential information. So thank you for taking that. And as Deb has stated, both of those fundings for SURF 2 and 4 have been approved for the capital. It's the other piece of that memo that still is awaiting approval from the ministry, but we will circle back with a legal memo to this committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor, thank you. Councillor Bell, you have the floor. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. John Sless has asked most of my questions, so thank you, John. But as a follow-up, could we see a report on the current status of 177 Colborne Street at a future meeting? And particularly, I'm interested in whether you've identified alternative locations in the event that we can't use the 177 Colborne Street site.
So
Go ahead. Go ahead, Marlene.
So through the chair, we have a memo, report in the queue to report back on the 177.
Marlene, could you move your microphone closer up to, we're having trouble hearing you, so.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now? Is that better?
No.
Now?
Better.
Is that better? Okay, my apologies. So we do have a report in the queue. We've had it there for a little while, actually, to report back on the update of 177. We are awaiting the ministry approval on our submission. And once we have that, we will definitely update everyone, including your ask, Ms. Councillor Bell. So yes, hopeful that that'll come in the February cycle.
Councillor Bell, anything further?
No, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions, folks? Okay, then we will go to the vote on item 5.1. Can I see a show of hands? Those in favor? And that appears to be unanimous. Thank you very much. Now, Councillor Miller, you have the floor to proceed with 6.2. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just while we're on the topic of childcare, they talk about retention and enhancing maybe more positions. I'm just wondering, do we have many unfulfilled childcare positions?
Yeah, good morning. Through the chair, Aaron Wallace, Director of Community Programs and Social Development. So the answer is yes. We do find that a lot of providers are looking for staff and having challenges keeping staff. I couldn't put a number on that for you, but that's definitely a challenge they're having.
Just a follow up then, through you, Mr. Chair. Aaron, what do you think? What do you think the biggest reason for that is? And I'm asking in a general sense too, because childcare isn't the only sector having trouble filling their positions. So, do you see anything unique to childcare? Maybe that's not so unique, or is unique to childcare, and it isn't part of the overall. Everybody's having trouble finding good help these days.
Yeah, through the chair, probably is part of the overall trend of trying to find good help. I would say that childcare is unique in the sense that it's often split shift. It's often it's more of a lower paying profession. And with the opening and closing of the childcares, I know there's been opening and closing in other sectors as well during the pandemic, but some of these staff have just found other positions. So the other contributing factor here is as the ministry puts out public health guidelines to say, we want these kids separated, or we want these kids, in smaller groups. You just need more staff to do that. You need more staff to place around. So I think that combination of the opening and closing, people leaving the sector, some of the needs where you just need more staff to meet the guidelines of the pandemic, and also it's always been a tough position to fill with the split shift and the lower end pay.
Okay, thank you, Thank you, Mr.
Councillor, thank you. Any additional questions or comments, folks, on 6.2? Then we shall go to the vote. A show of hands, those in favor, please. And that carries. Thank you very much. So today we have no resolutions before us. I've seen no notices of motion. So I will thank you very much for your participation today. And if somebody would care to make a motion to adjourn, Mayor Bailey, thank you for the most important motion of the morning, sir. And I'll wish you all a good day, and we'll see you again next month. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.